Hello and welcome to the next episode of this tutorial. Today we are going to be looking at actually using these models in the game and making a little bit more spaceships. So if I click on, let's say, this spaceship, the second one on the top, go to the menu button and then the play button right here and hit the first level. I can see that I now have a black spaceship, and if I hit the fire button, I fire loads of rockets right here. And as always, you can get this scene and the end scene from the links down below. So what we have here is just a simple shop menu where we can select different spaceships. But if I select this spaceship, for example, and go to the menu and then the play button and hit the level 1 button, nothing really changes and we still have the base spaceship that we had before. So let's try and change that. So open up the game manager, and here where we track the current spaceship right here, which we have active, let's change up a couple of things. Let's try and track these spaceships by index right here, this index. So let's make a private int and call this the current spaceship index and set that to 0 like this. And the game object right here, let's make this a getter. So just do this and then go to the spaceship prefabs array and just return the current spaceship index like this. If you're not familiar with this, it's basically just the same as doing a function. Let's make a public game object function and call this the current spaceship, and it will just return the spaceship prefabs, basically just return this thing right here. This is the exact same thing basically. And now the game manager, since it tracks the current selected spaceship, we don't really want to destroy it, and this we can delete this for now. Okay, we don't need that. And the index, obviously the current spaceship is now a getter, so it's basically just a function, not a variable. So in here we want just to be the current spaceship index equal to the index that we pass in like this. Since it's a private variable, we don't really want to change it, and we don't really want to make this public because it's quite a sensitive variable here. Now, since the game manager tracks everything, so the selected spaceship for now and maybe a lot more things later on, we don't want to destroy it once we load a new scene. So just make in the invoke function right here, just add a simple line and let's call this the DontDestroyOnLoad function and then the game object. So now Unity will not destroy the game manager game object right here in the menu scene, and this game object holds the script with the game manager. So that's quite a good thing for us. If we would now start the game and hit the play button and select level 1, this game object would still be in the level 1 scene. So that's quite awesome. Let's now go to the scenes folder and open up the level 1 scene. So now we have the game manager. That's quite good. And we now know which spaceship we have selected. Let's also make a new game object so that we can actually have multiple spaceships in this scene and call this the player manager. And then also make a script and call this the player manager as well. And now just drop the player manager on the player manager game object. And what this is going to do, it's going to basically hold all these spaceships. So let's now, this has one child right here, the player manager. That's good. And if I disable it, it's disabled. Now if I go to the assets folder and the, where is it, the Star Sparrow folder, prefabs, and let's drag and drop the second one under the player manager. So it has now 2 children. Now if I if I go to the transform and copy component and paste the transform in the second one right here, paste component values. And now if I disable the first one, I can still see the second one. And this is basically how it's going to work. So we're going to have all the spaceships under the player manager, and we're just going to figure out, depending on the index, which spaceship is going to be the active one. So now we can just basically, let's disable the first one and set up the second one. Okay, so it actually can work. So now go to the first one and let's look. The mesh renderer is okay. Let's go to the rigid body and go to the copy component and then paste component values as new. Paste component as new, I mean, not values. That's good. And go to the first one again. And the box color, we are going to create that separately. And the player controller, let's copy the component and paste the component as new right here. And let's leave all of this be for now. And let's also go to the scene view and let's create a box collider. Add a box collider, set it to a trigger, and then edit the collider. And if you remember the tutorial where we did this, we want to drag it back here and then also size the sides down by a little bit. So just go to the X and size it down and go to the Y view right here, and that looks quite alright to me. And probably just do this a little bit more. Okay, that's good. And now if I go to the player controller script, the missile spawn points, they are the missile spawn points from the first one, which we don't want, obviously. So let's go to the Star Sparrow 2, right click and create an empty game object. rename this to the missile spawn point 1, and I would recommend you to go to the 2D view and select the move tool right here, and then we can probably move it up here and like this, so we have it nicely centered, and then go out of the 2D view, go to the Y right here, and then drag it back so it's in this thing, so when the rocket spawns it looks decent. And now once you're happy with that, you can just duplicate it and then remove the negative from the X right here, the X position. Now we have 2 spawn points right here, that's good, and go to the star sparrow, and do not forget to drop these spawn points in the spawn points right here. That's awesome. And now if I would start the game right here in this scene view, now I should be able to basically move around. But if I try to shoot the rockets, I should get a null reference, because the in-game manager, if we open it up right here, when we click the fire button, this function gets called right here in the in-game manager, right? And the player controller that we drag and drop in here in Unity, we can see star sparrow 1 in parentheses player controller. That's the inactive one. Then this function gets called in this script, okay, in the star sparrow 1 player controller right here. We do not want that. We want to figure out dynamically the active player controller. Right here we have 2 player controllers in this scene, and we actually need to figure out and get a reference to the active one, because just one rocket, one spaceship is going to be active, and the given spaceship is going to fire the rockets, okay? So go to the in-game manager, and we are going to use the player manager actually for that, okay? So open up the in-game manager, and in here where we have the player controller reference, just change this to the player manager reference, and change this to player manager, and down here in the on fire clicked, just copy and paste the player manager in the fire rockets right here function in here. Now go back to Unity and open up the player manager script, and let's also remove this, and let's make a public void, and what did we call it in here again? The fire rocket. So copy that so it's good, and just do this, and okay, now we have a fire rockets button, and it doesn't do anything right now. That's quite alright. And now we still have to go to the in-game manager and actually set up the player manager script so we do not forget about it. We'll just drag that in here, and now let's open up the player manager again, and let's try to work on that. So what do we want to do in here? We do need a private reference, so let's make a private and call this the player controller. And again, call this the active player controller. And this can be private because we're dynamically gonna try and get the information out of this. Okay, let's make a awake function. And in this awake function, we want to basically call another function which is going to get this component right here and actually set the spaceship active. So when we start the scene, we're going to have 9 spaceships right here, and all of them are going to be inactive like this. Once this scene loads, the player manager is going to loop through all of its children and figure out which spaceship is currently active. And we're going to use the game manager script for that, or the game manager game object actually, because it is not going to be destroyed once we load a new scene. So in here, we need to loop through all the children and then get the index from the game manager right here. Where is it? The private int current spaceship index. Okay, so let's try and do that. Open up the player manager and let's make a function and call this the set current spaceship. So if we want to get the index, you have to go to the game manager. So if we want to get the current index of the spaceship, we have to go to the game manager. And right here where we have the private int current spaceship index, we want a public int. Let's make this a getter again, the same thing right here, and call this the same name just with a capital C, and then return the current spaceship index like this. We want to do it this way because this value is quite important and we don't want to accidentally change it somehow, okay? So we just make a getter, and so we cannot access this value and change it actually. Let's now go back to the player manager, and in the set current spaceship we want a integer and call this the current spaceship index, and set that equal to the game manager dot instance dot current spaceship index like this, no parentheses in a getter. Now let's make a transform, and now we actually want to activate the transform. So the player manager sits on this game object right here, and its children are the spaceships that we want to loop through. So we can just make a for each loop and call this the transform spaceship in the this.transform, so the game object's transform that we sit on. And now we also want a integer, so int I is equal to 0. And let's make again an int current index because it might be weird, and I++. like this. And now, if the current index is going to be equal to the current spaceship index that we look for in here, then we want to activate it, and else just precaution, then deactivate it. Now, if we want to activate it, we want to go to the transform of the spaceship.gameObject.setActive and then just pass in the true. And if we want to deactivate it just as a precaution, and this doesn't really matter performance wise because in the awake function it's going to be just called once. So okay, now we activate the spaceship. That's quite awesome, but we still need to somehow get the active player controller script reference, and we are going to do that simply. If we are activating the spaceship, we want the active game controller to be equal to the spaceship that we are currently on, and then the get component, and then the player controller, like this. Okay, awesome. Now we are getting the reference that we need. And now if we want to fire the rockets, we are just simply going to be calling the active player controller dot fire rockets. So basically the in-game manager, when we click the fire button, calls the player manager in the fire rockets function. So we go to the player manager, the fire rockets, and this will call the fire rockets in the active player controllers. Now if I hit F12, this is going to open up, and this function, this is the function that we want to call. Now that this function is done, we actually need to call this function in the awake function right here, like this. And now if I go back to Unity, and now we have two spaceships right here, okay? If I set this active, this spaceship appears, and if I set the other one active, this one appears. That's quite good. But now if I hit the play button, it's not going to work because the game manager is not here, and if we try to shoot, we will get a null reference, which sucks. But if I go to the menu scene, I should be able to actually select the first or the second one. So let's hit the play button in the menu scene, go to the shop, and let's select the one that we have here. That's this one. But if I select any other of these, they will just not get set active at all, and I will probably get a null reference or some kind of error again because we just set up these two spaceships. Let's try select the second one, go to the menu, then go to the play scene, and then hit the level 1. And once the scene loads, we should be able to move around with the spaceship and then actually also fire rockets. And the reddening of the asteroids is working. And if I hit the shoot button, I will definitely hit this asteroid. Awesome. And we are also going to take damage, and everything should work quite nicely. Let's go back to the level 1 scene, and I do not like that we can actually not start the game right here just by setting one of these active. And also, actually, to take damage, we have to set the tag to the player right here. Because the asteroid, when it impacts with something, it checks for the tag. So this Star Sparrow 1 has the tag player, and this also has to have the tag player. I'm sorry for that. But now, let's go back to this. And still, if I hit the play button, I want to be able to just test out these spaceships on their own without actually loading the, the menu scene, okay? So let's try and code that. So let's try and double click on this null reference. And this is the null reference because this game object does not exist in this scene, the game manager. We will get a null reference. So let's just try for debug purposes and testing in the game development. Let's make in the awake function a if statement if the game manager.instance is equal to null, which it will be. We want to actually try a different approach, and let's call this just for debugging, and also make the debug.log so we know that we are debugging or just testing. And else we just want to then do this basically if we are in the game, in a real game. So in here we would just want to get the first active player controller script. So in here, right here, the Star Sparrow 2 is the active player controller. So we just want to loop through all of them and stop at the first one and get that one, okay? So let's try and do that. So let's make a private void, probably somewhere at the bottom, a private void, and get first active controller. And also right away, copy this function and paste it right here in this if statement, okay? So that we call it right away and don't have to set it up later or just forget about it. In here, we again want to loop through all the children. So just copy this for each, basically. We're going to have the same for each loop right here. So in here, we just want to figure out if this current spaceship transform is active. So just go if the spaceship.gameObject.activeSelf right here is equal to true. Then we want to the active player controller to be equal to the spaceship.getComponent, and then get the player controller, and then just return from here because we got the first one and we don't really care about anything else, okay? This is just for debugging purposes, which we will then later delete. Don't forget to call the function. And now if I go back to the game, I should be able to basically play around with it and test out everything right away. Okay, now we can actually even shoot rockets like this. Basically, if I hit the shoot button, it will shoot, and awesome. Let's also set up like faster rockets or just different rocket types and everything, so I can show you how to do that. Go to the prefabs folder, double click on your missile green prefab, and it will open up in the scene view. Okay, and let's click on the missile component. And if I open up the missile material green and click on the albedo, we can again, let's say, change it to a dark blue or a red color or a pinkish color and everything you want to do. I'm just gonna remove the change, and let's try and actually do that. So now we need to a different material. So the same way we made a new material for the asteroids, we're gonna try and find the material for this missile. So go to the assets folder, missile and materials, and here the material green, and duplicate it. Okay, Control D. Drag this material in the prefabs folder, open up your prefabs folder, and rename this to the missile green. This is renamed, and now the albedo, let's set it to something like blue for now. And then also go to your missile green and duplicate this game object and rename this to missile blue. And this material is not going to be called missile green, but obviously missile blue. Sorry for that. Like this. And I'll open the missile blue just by double clicking on it. So this missile blue is written right here. And now the missile blue, drag and drop it on the missile component, and this will automatically change. And you can play around with it, and probably even the emission color. Let's set it to something like, let's go to a bluish color, and just set it to something, okay, that's too much, so it's just a little brighter like this. That looks quite alright to me. And now if I go to the missile blue, I can also change the speed. So let's make this rocket a little bit faster so that the spaceships are different. Like this, let's say something 550, okay? Now we'll go back to the hierarchy and select the Star Sparrow 2. And right here, the missile green prefab, let's try and drag and drop the missile blue in here. And let's also change up controls a little bit. So if I go to the Star Sparrow 1, let's make the spaceship a little bit smaller. Okay, so if I set it active so that we can actually see it. And let's double click on the Sparrow 1. Be sure that it's the Sparrow 1, and go down in here, and the move speed, let's select something like, let's say 13. Max rotation, that's good. The max health, let's set that to 3. And fire interval 2, that's quite alright. And let's set it inactive and go to the Star Sparrow 2. And now let's make the move speed 20. The health, let's say 4. So these two spaceships have different health. And the fire rate, let's say something like 1.5. And if I start a game and shoot a rocket, these rockets are going to be blue and way faster, as you can see right here, okay? So that's quite awesome. So they're blue and fast. So let me show you how to do spaceships. And it's quite important that they are in the same order as the game manager has the list or the array of game objects, okay? That we pull from for the buttons. Go to the assets folder and go to the Star Sparrow folder, prefabs, and let's drag the third one in here under the player manager. Set the Star Sparrow 2 to inactive. And so go to the Star Sparrow 2, and copy the rigid body. So right click on it and copy component. Go to the Star Sparrow 3 and paste component as new. And also the Star Sparrow 2, copy the transform. So copy component, go to the Star Sparrow 3 and paste component values. Double click on it to focus again. And also the tag has to be the player tag right here. So they're the same player tag. And now scroll down and get the player controller. So right click on that, hit the copy component and paste component as new. And now we have to change the missile spawn points. So double click, go to 2D view like this, and create a empty game object and rename this to missile spawn point 1. Select the move tool and let's move it down somewhere you want these rockets to spawn. So I'll go back to the 3D view, and where do I want them to spawn? Let's say I want 3 spawn points. Okay, so go to the 2D view and let's select the move tool again, and I want to spawn one right here. The second one is just going to be the same, just without a negative. And the third one is going to be right here in the middle, okay? So that we can try and check it out how we can do that. So like right here, that looks good. Exit the 2D view and go to the Y button and click that right here. And this is alright. And the second and third one, select both of them and drag them back here. So the missile spawns right here in these thrusters. And in the Star Sparrow 3, in the player controller, set the size up to 3. And then drag and drop the missile spawn point 1 in here, missile spawn point 2, and missile spawn point 3. And don't worry that they don't change. Just because the name is the same doesn't mean the game object. So if I click on this, this will get highlighted, this will get highlighted, and this will get highlighted. Yeah, that's exactly how it's supposed to be. And for the rocket prefab, let's just go to the prefabs folder and let's change this to the normal green missile, and you can have as many missiles as you want. Let's make the move speed something like 12. Let's make this a slower rocket, and the max health, let's make it like 5. Okay, now if I start the game, now if I go to the Star Sparrow 2, we have a box collider, okay? In the Star Sparrow 3, we also need to add a box collider like this. Set it to S trigger and then edit collider. And again, drag this to the wings. And then for the X component, just make it a little bit smaller. And probably drag the back of it a little bit in. And now if I hit the play button and have only the Star Sparrow 3 active, I can freely move around, and I can also shoot 3 rockets. You know, see, 3 rockets were shot. Now if I hover over it in the middle, awesome, now we have a ship that can shoot 3 rockets. I would probably even move this one up in the front of it. So let's pause the game actually and go to the missile spawn point. Which one was it? The second one, and drag this to the front up here. Now if I unpause the game and hit the shoot button, we see that these rockets shoot in a kind of bird-like formation thing, and it's quite alright. And now if I go to the spawn point 1, or was it the spawn point 1? Let's pause the game again. Oh no, it was the spawn point 3, and I can copy the component again and then return to the scene view, and then again go to the spawn point 2 right here, this one, and paste component values like this, and it's going to jump to the front of the plane or a spaceship. And yeah, that's how you create the spaceships. So let me create the spaceships and then bring you back. I decided that I will do this Star Sparrow 4 with you, just to show you one more example where we are going to change a couple of rocket sizes. So we have, like, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rockets to fire. And if you don't want to see it, we are not going to code anything in this tutorial anymore, so you can just skip to the end. And just if you want to, you can also download the files. I'll have all the rockets in the end scene, and if you want to do it on your own, just go for it. It will actually not matter for the rest of the tutorial. The only thing important is that you have 9 spaceships for the 9 buttons that we have, and they are in the same order as your buttons are. And yeah, if you enjoyed it and you want to leave, just hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below. And if not, just, well, enjoy the making of the 4th spaceship. The first thing I did was go to Star Sparrow 3, copy component again, right here, the transform, and then go to the Star Sparrow 4 and copy paste component values so that I moved it to the right position. The second thing I did was the tag. Let's change it to the player tag right here. The Star Sparrow 3 has the player tag. The next thing I want to do is create some rocket spawn points. So create an empty game object and call this the missile spawn point. Go to the 2D view and let's position that one up, and let's zoom in a little bit, and I want to spawn them right here. Then duplicate it and let's remove the negative sign so it's on the other side, and let's duplicate it again and let's move it to the right. So I have these 2 right here and 1 right here, and then this one is right here, and let's duplicate it again and let's remove the negative sign again. So 1, 2, 3, 4 actually, and let's go out of the 2D view. And let's also spawn 2 rockets right here at the front of this spaceship. So duplicate the third one and just move it this way, and then move it right here into this. And again, duplicate the 4th one. So this point right here. And then add a negative sign. Let's do it the other way around, so it jumps to the side right here. So now if we look at it, it's a little bit too high, as you can see. So we have to drag the 4th and 5th one down quite a bit. So just zoom in and zoom in a little bit more like this. This is good, I would say. And let's still fiddle around with it a little bit. Drag it to this side, drag it in front so that it spawns right in there. Oh, that's good, like this. Okay, now we have to go to the Y view. Let's select the 4 first ones and just drag them back so they spawn actually in this area right here. Now if I select these, they spawn right where I want them to spawn, maybe just a little bit further, like this. Okay, that's quite good. So now go to the Star Sparrow 4, and let's copy a couple of components. So go to the rigid body, copy component, paste component as new, And again, Star Sparrow 3, go to the player controller, copy component, and again, paste component as new. And for the missiles, we want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So let's make 6 elements right here and drag the first one in there, 5th, and the 6th one. Like this, and just for safety, click on it, and it's gonna highlight on the left in the hierarchy, and again, click, 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 and click, and click. Awesome. And let's make a new missile. So go to the prefabs actually, and let's duplicate the blue missile right here, okay? Rename it to small missile. Double click to open it up, and also duplicate the blue material and rename this to, let's say, red material, missile red. Drag and drop the red material on the missile right here, and then the material should change up here to the red, and then also let's make it like a reddish color, like something. Okay, we have to reset the emission to black so we can actually see it, and yeah, this looks quite good. And then also let's downsize the game object, so go to something like 0.25, and then also in here go 0.025, and on the Z again 0.025. Okay, now we have a small rocket. That's quite good. Go back to the scene view by clicking the back button, and for the Star Sparrow 4 in the missile or rocket prefab, just drag and drop the small missile in here. And the last thing we have to do is add a box collider as always. So again, set it to a trigger and edit collider. Drag this in, drag the X in by a bit too, like that, and then we can start the game. And if I go down here and shoot rockets, now we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rocket shots, and that's awesome. And they are in this formation, 2 are next to each other, and the other ones are a little bit in front. Okay, that looks quite good, and this is going to just be easy. So we can just shoot rockets like this. Awesome, and they're quite fast, and they're small so that their hit range is smaller, and we can destroy more asteroids with them, and that's quite awesome. So now I'll create the rest of the rockets. So if I start the game and then go to the shop, and let's say I select the blue one right here and go to the menu and then play button, hit the first level. I have this spaceship spawned. The Don't Destroy Unload right here has the game manager in here. This is quite good. And now I can fire any amount of rockets I want. This is quite awesome. Thanks for watching this tutorial. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and be ready for the next episode. Bye!